Don't you worry, the clip's about to begin, but don't forget to subscribe. Or else, don't make me turn this website around.
All right, I've been excited for this one. Ugh, let me just stretch this out before we get going, because I have a feeling I know the direction. I think a Mormon's about to try and win me back, so let's see if they can do it. Joseph, the namesake of the founder of Mormonism in Utah. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, Jimmy. Thank you so much. Hi, Katy.
Good. Glad to hear that. Joseph, please
go
ahead. No, after you.
Oh, just that I am so grateful to speak with you, but also to speak with Katy again, and just to let her know that I've been sharing her podcast with my large Mormon family this week. And
amazing.
am excited for her to get what I think is the Jimmy Snow bump tonight.
Oh, that's not a real thing. I think Shannon and Katy had more concurrent viewership last week than we are right now. So if anything, I bring the whole show down. But
well, I'm also grateful. Yeah, Shannon's also so great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shannon's the best. Anyway, Joseph, it says here you want to discuss potential supporting evidence for the founding text for the Book of Mormon.
Only because I think that if you were to debunk what is essentially an unofficial Mormon report to the CES letter, you could potentially be as well known as Fawn Brody or Sandra Tanner.
Sure. So what's the potential evidence? I'm also bad with names, so I'm like, I don't even remember who those people are. But Joseph, what is the evidence you want to discuss?
So the main proponent of this particular theory of evidence, which is supposed to claim, advanced metallurgy like swords and scimitars, spearheads, and also Semitic DNA, and it's all being proposed by a man named Rodney Meldrum, who is on YouTube, and his model is called the Heartland model, and it is supposed to prove, in all scientific terms, that the Book of Mormon did take place as it is described, which I know is something that, if something like that is catching on among Mormons as quickly as the CES letter did, I would want you to be aware of that and potentially debunk it, at your leisure.
Well, so first of all, the actual action of debunking, because even here as a person who will debunk creationism, I debunk creationism by essentially repeating, after doing my own research of observations, also education and such, I am repeating what other people did, the experiments other people did. I'm not going to be I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to be the main person who debunks it. The fact that this is a proposal means to me that it is currently in the hypothesis stage, and I can tell you that my confidence is such that if the individual is correct, there is going to be no problem for him to survive peer review and the general acceptance of, while they won't give commentary on is the Book of Mormon true, the commentary of these anachronisms are now spoken for and the like, those things are going to be no problem for the scientific community to come up with. Here is my concern and why I'm not worried that it's going to happen. You are clearly describing an individual who has decided first that it is true, and now will go find the evidence, quote unquote, to fill that, as opposed to the way science is, where you pose a hypothesis, you come up with a means of demonstrating the plausibility, and then you spend the time yourself trying to debunk it by trying to figure out the physical reasons for that hypothesis seeming to bear fruit. And so we see this time and time again with, for example, Ken Ham's Creation Museum. I have a feeling that the individual you're speaking about will have a website that is very interesting and go, oh, look at this piece, look at this piece, look at this piece, and either be in total denial of, rejection of, or ignorance of all of the stuff that that is against it. Because when it comes to modern anthropology, despite the fact that we haven't found a lot, we are pretty fucking good at it. And so when it came to like little civilizations that were talked about in the Old Testament in random parts of the desert in Egypt, they literally went and found evidence of those civilizations, even though the only thing these people dropped were a few pots along the way, as opposed to other things in the Old Testament where they talk about the exodus of the Jews from Egypt, which just plain out didn't happen. And there's a lot of reasons why it didn't happen. But furthermore, there's no physical evidence of it happening, despite the fact that we can find it. So we're not just talking about, did somebody figure out how to do a little bit of metalworking? Could be, maybe. However, what is the claim of the Book of Mormon? Millions of people with swords and scimitars and chariots, at a time where horses weren't present on the continent. There were horses prior, but not at a time, but at a time when they weren't present on the continent. All of those things happened in a single battle, and millions of people died. One of the biggest civilizations to ever exist, certainly in history, one of the biggest battles to ever happen in history, filled with metal, and we haven't found so much as a sheath or a chariot wheel. So yes, I am excited that you're telling me this guy's going to try and go through the scientific process to prove from his own, but that's not what the CES letter is, and you kind of presented them like they were on equal grounds. The CES letter was, hey, I grew up Mormon and I have these questions. If you can answer them to my satisfaction, even most of them or some of them having more bearing than others, I will return as a full Mormon and will be excited to. The problem being that they couldn't, because the evidence is actually contrary to the conclusions that they come to for those questions. So it's exciting that somebody's like, I'm going to prove it with science. You know who else tried to do that? Me. About 10 years ago, I decided Mormonism is so obviously true that I'm going to be able to show that to other people and prove it to other people. Like, it's so clear to me. I just got to go get the physical evidence and the facts and the things where I can make it very concise and recite it to people. And they're going to be like, oh my God, what have I done all my life not being a Mormon? You know what that resulted in? My atheism, my loss of faith. So, Joseph, with all that in mind, I give you back the stage.
Well, thank you so much, Jimmy. Like this is why I think that YouTube is so important as a platform. I think that the world is paying attention to that now more because of the global pandemic and, you know, the inability of a lot of celebrities and politicians to come across as genuine on traditional platforms. So yeah. I think that you and Katy are pioneers on the new TV, and I'm very proud of everything that you guys have accomplished. But it's a weird thing, but I think that this guy, Rod Meldrum, that's how I imagine your dad.
Oh, it could be. Yeah. I mean, my dad is a person who totally suspends his skepticism whenever it is comes against his religion or himself observing his own character flaws. So yeah, it very well could be. Yep. Yep.
But like physically, that's what I imagine him to look like. So if you ever see a picture of Rod Meldrum and that's not what your dad looks like, you know, feel free to correct me.
Sure. Sure. Will do. I will hang on. What's the guy's name again? Rod Meldrum? Yeah, there he is.
Meldrum. Mm-hmm. Also,
that is not
Katy,
what my father
I just wanted to know like what your thoughts are on like extraterrestrial, like the likelihood of that.
I think my current position on life off like on other planets other than Earth is that the universe is so big that I wouldn't be surprised if life had evolved somewhere else. Like, that seems reasonable. Seems like a reasonable guess. I think that the chance of life evolving to the point where it creates interstellar travel and travels to Earth and abducts people is zero. I just think that's nonsense. There's no evidence for that, and it's very unlikely. I just don't think it makes any sense at all. But the idea that there's other life elsewhere in the universe seems very plausible to me. If that's what you're asking my opinion, my straight opinion.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yep.
So I don't know if
thank
you
you.
mind if I add to. So I'm obviously not an ex-Mormon, and I don't know loads about Mormonism. I just add one point that I was just going to add on to what Jimmy said, which is suppose that they do dig somewhere that they've never dug before, and they find evidence of this million-person battle or whatever supposedly happened, and there's all these swords and shields, and it's all changes things. If they find that evidence, that will change our understanding of the history of humans and so much about various scientific things that we know and studies, but it wouldn't actually be proof for the Mormon religion. Like it would be taking one piece of. So currently, the fact that there is no evidence for that at all, and it's looking really, really unlikely that there ever will be, that is an argument against Mormonism. But if we then got rid of that issue and there was a big million-person battle, that would just be removing one of the burdens on Mormonism. It wouldn't be then evidence for Mormonism.
I don't know that I agree entirely. So it wouldn't be conclusive evidence. You wouldn't be able to say we found this, therefore Mormonism is true. But you could list it in a column of this apparent event that no one had any clue about, was written about in the 1800s through a text that was allegedly interpreted. And now you can say, this is, but again, having evidence for... Right.
But there could be some other reason. He could have stumbled across a historical record of it and then just repeated that and then said it was something to do with God, or there are other explanations.
Right. It's not conclusive evidence is all I'm saying. There is actually, you can say things are evidences for, there is quote unquote evidences for creationism. Having evidence does not mean you have now created the conclusive argument. And so it is the further observation of that, especially in the broader context, that's important. By the way, to the person who was talking about the, what did they say? The Apure papyrus. I don't know if that's the right way to pronounce it. That is not proof that the Exodus happened. It is proof that somebody wrote about some chaotic event in Egyptian history sometime hundreds of years ago, or even thousands of years ago, from a similar era, though not necessarily the same time, within hundreds of years of when the Exodus is alleged to happen. It absolutely is not proof that it did happen, because it's literally a story. So if one of them I'm telling you is a fiction story, the idea that somebody else wrote a similar story, and by the way, there's not even scholarly agreement that it's talking about the Exodus. They just have some similarities in common, as do many of the made-up stories in the holy books with other tradition stories. To the person who believes that proves the Exodus happens, you are not aware of what the word prove means. Anyway, Joseph, thanks for calling.
Thank you. Have a great night, guys.
Thank you.
Too.
Bye.
Let me actually, if I can rewind a moment to when I went to the end of my little rant there. Snap. All right. Hey, thanks for checking out this clip for The Line. While you're here, hit that like button, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and then share this with that bitter uncle of yours who loves talking about the good old days.